I got two questions for you. How many of you believe that tax rates are going to go up in the near future? Right? Think about it. Are tax rates going to go up or down? I would guess that most of you said yes, they will go up. Second question, how many of you have a tax strategy in place right now to make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to avoid taxes? I would say most of you said no. Stick around, folks. Let's get a tax strategy in place. Super excited today. My name is Joe Anderson, certified financial planner, president of Pure Financial Advisors, and I'm with Alan Clopine. He's right over there. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Joe.
And, you know, there's a lot of things that you can't control. Taxes is one of them, your fees and cost of your overall investment strategy, your discipline, the risk that you take. Those are the things that you can control, but we focus on things that we cannot, right? Like the markets. Can we control the markets or interest rates? Absolutely not. You need to make sure that you understand what you can control to have better success in your overall retirement, and taxes is number one on the list. That is today's financial focus. But here's the problem, folks. Here's the problem. Here's a recent study. They said 46% of retirees say they wished they would have had a plan in place to reduce their overall taxes. Wish, right? Wish is not a plan. Wish is not a strategy. It's like looking in the rearview mirror. I wish I would have done this or that. Let's stop wishing and start doing. To help us with it, let's bring in Alan Clopine.
All right, one of my favorite topics being a CPA. Let's get into taxes and let's get into how to save taxes. That's what's most important. First, you got to understand what type of taxes there are, and then we'll get into the taxes that you can save money at, like capital gains, cheaper tax than regular ordinary income rates, and Roth IRAs, that's tax-free. Your residence, selling your residence, you can create tax-free income that way. And then finally, most importantly, it's like putting it all together, creating a tax plan so that you have less taxes in retirement, and Joe, you can have a better lifestyle in retirement.
Well, I think so, right? Because if I can pay less money to the overall IRS, that's more money for me and my family, right? And if you take a look at what's going on this year with the overall stimulus, right, we're seeing the debt and the deficit reaching, record levels. Somehow, some way, we're going to have to pay for this. I don't know what the solution is. They could inflate, inflation could help. Maybe we grow ourselves out of it, or they could tax us. So if you believe tax rates are going to go higher, let's do some planning. Al, let's first start with just understanding kind of the different taxes that people pay.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of confusion about this, but the regular kind of tax, what we're most used to, it's called ordinary income taxes. That's for salary, for pension, for interest, dividends, and the like, rental income and so forth. So that starts as low as 10% and goes as high as 37%. There's already talk about raising the 37 back to 39.6. We'll have to see what happens. So that's the more expensive kind of tax. Then, Joe, you get into capital gains, and capital gains are 0%, 15, and 20%, depending upon your income level.
Right, and then you also have a net investment income tax on top of the capital gains. So when you're looking at capital gains, well, what is a capital gain, and how would you be able to take advantage of capital gains tax? I remember a few years ago, and it's like Warren Buffett, right? He's one of the richest people in the world, and they were like, you know what? Warren Buffett pays a lower tax rate than his secretary. And then you're thinking, how could that be? Warren Buffett is a multi-billionaire. Well, it's because most of his assets are capital assets. So this is stocks, bonds, businesses, real estate. It's not necessarily a retirement account, right? I'm sure he has a 401k plan. I have no idea. But most of his assets are outside of the retirement account, and they're capital assets. And they have a special tax treatment. So if you're in a lower tax bracket, the 10 or 12%, you sell a stock or bond up to that level, guess what? You don't pay any tax at all. So it's very tax favored, right? Especially for lower income individuals. If you make a little bit more income, the capital gains rate is only 15%. And then if you're at the highest income level, then that's where it gets a little bit more expensive, but it's still 20%. In L, it's always been lower than ordinary income.
It has, with very few exceptions, Joe. And a capital asset, so you're right, that's anything outside of retirement. Think of that as a capital asset, but you have to own it for at least a year, right, to get the long-term capital gain treatment. And you can net capital gains with losses. So that simply means if you have a gain and a loss, you can net those two together. And so because of that, you want to take a look at strategies like tax loss harvesting.
Yeah, take a look at this, folks. So let's just say that you have a stock, right, and you buy it at about $22 per share, and then it goes up to about $30 a share. Then it drops to about $17 a share. So your basis is really, let's just call it 22, and it drops to 17. So you have a $5 loss here. So this is a loss that you can write off on your tax return. So, you know, it's almost the opposite of what you should be thinking in regards to tax planning, because we would recommend potentially selling that asset. And then you're like, what are you talking about? Why would I sell when it's down? Right? That's the last thing I want to do. Yes, it's not sell and go into cash. It's sell this investment and buy something similar. Right? So let's say if you have a mutual fund that has large companies in it, you could sell that and buy something similar. It can't be identical, but you still want to be in the stock market. So you sell mutual fund A, you buy mutual fund B, now you have this loss. And so when the market then recovers, and if you need to create income or sell it to purchase something else, you have that loss that offsets that gain dollar for dollar. So tax loss harvesting is a tax strategy that is absolutely wonderful in retirement. The markets are going to be volatile, right? We all know this, but taking this loss is a huge gain long term.
Because you'll be able to take those losses in future years. They don't phase out, they continue.
This is probably one of the largest years that you want to make sure that you do some tax planning. Who knows what the future is going to bring? We're in all-time low tax rates, almost in the history of the tax code. What we have today is a special offer that you cannot ignore. It's our 2020 tax planning guide. Like I said, 2020 has been a crazy year, but it is also a great opportunity for all of us to do what we can to save money in taxes. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on that special offer. It's our 2020 tax planning guide. Got to take a break. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Go to our website, folks, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer today. It's the 2020 Tax Planning Guide. It's something that you want to make sure that you get your hands on. It's free of charge. You can download it right there. Boom. 2020 Tax Planning Guide, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer. Let's see how you did on the true-false question.
If I utilize tax loss harvesting strategies from my stock portfolio, I can net those losses with gains from selling my real estate. And believe it or not, that's a true statement. Any kind of capital loss nets with any kind of capital gain. So it goes back to what we just talked about. Tax loss harvesting is so important to save future taxes because you can net those prior losses against future gains.
I think a lot of times too, if people have a stock loss, they might think you will write off against ordinary income dollar for dollar.
And you cannot do that.
So up to $3,000 when it comes to a stock loss or even a real estate loss though. On the other hand, Alan, let's say if I have a rental property, right? Remember 2008, we see the real estate bubble, right? And if I sold a property at a loss, can I take that as ordinary income or how does that work?
Well, that's a great question, Joe. And actually there is a special rule for rental properties if it's treated as a business, which most people treat their rental properties as a business. If it goes up, you get capital gain treatment. If it goes down, you get to write off as an ordinary loss. So it's kind of best of both worlds.
Let's talk about tax rates real quick, because when you get into strategy, capital gain strategy, retirement income strategies, whatever, you really need to understand how the tax system works here in the U.S. And this is where the brackets are today. We have a 10% bracket, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37. All right. We know this is that these brackets are going to change in a few years. 2026 is when these brackets are going to increase. The 12 is going to go back to 15. The 22 is going to go to 25, 24 to 28. 32 actually stays the same. And then this will go to 39.6. So, or does 32 go to 33 and 35 stays the same? You're the CPA here, buddy, right?
I need my table.
So when you look at tax rates, it's like, all right, well, if I'm in these brackets here, the 10 and the 12% tax bracket, guess what? There is no capital gains rate. So when you look at where your money's held, is it in tax deferred? Is it in tax free? Or is it over here sitting in taxable accounts, right? They all have different types of taxes. Your tax deferred is going to be taxed at ordinary income. So those are these rates here. 10% to 37%. So the amount of money that you pull out of that tax deferred account is going to be subject to those rates. But over here in your taxable account, well, this is what we were talking about. Tax loss harvesting, capital gains rates, 0%. You can create tax-free income over here. And this is another pretty cool one, the tax-free rate, right? That's your Roth IRAs. So when you look at how your assets are distributed from a tax perspective, this will give you a better understanding of, all right, where do I fall? Let's do some inventory here. And then how diversified are you? If I am a betting man, which I'm not, I were to guess though, most of the assets, Al, are sitting right here in the tax deferred account.
Because if it's all in retirement, all in those accounts at retirement, you've got ordinary income. You may have ordinary income for your pension, for your IRA, for your 401k, for Social Security. Maybe you got rental income, interest dividends. That could all be ordinary income. The fix, though, Joe, is getting money to the Roth IRA.
Right. So there's a few different ways that you can do this. You can make direct contributions into a Roth IRA. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions here. Is that, all right, well, maybe I don't qualify, maybe I do, I don't know, right? I've never heard of a Roth. So what a Roth IRA is a shell that you can invest in anything that you want, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, okay? Even real estate, precious metals, I don't care. Just understand that any growth that you have in that account is going to come out to you 100% tax-free. So you could make contributions as long as you have earned income. So if you are employed or your spouse is employed, you could put up to $6,000 into a Roth IRA as a direct contribution. If you are over 50, you can put $7,000 into the overall plan. So that's one way to do it. Another way is that you could take these tax deferred dollars that you know that you're going to have to pay ordinary income tax on them regardless. And if you believe tax rates are a little bit lower today than where they're going to be in the future, it might make sense for you to say, you know what, I want to take some dollars from this and move it up into my tax-free account. So maybe it's 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand. There is no limit for a conversion. So this is taking tax-deferred dollars, moving it into a Roth IRA. You do pay the tax by going up here, but then you'll never ever pay taxes on those dollars again. So that's why looking here is key. What tax bracket are you in? What is your taxable income? Maybe my taxable income is, let's just say if I'm married, $151,000. Well, if my taxable income is $151,000, in the top of that bracket is $171,000, well, it might make sense for me to end the show. No, to put 20 grand right up here, right? Pay the tax on the 20, I keep myself in that tax bracket, but now I have $20,000 that will forever grow tax-free. Compound tax-free, there is no better gift than that, right? So it's leveraging what you currently have, understanding where the tax code is, and then making sure that you are diversified long-term. Don't keep the blinders on. It's great that you're saving all this money here, but guess what? It's all going to be subject to income tax, the highest of rates. This is always going to be tax-free, okay? This is going to be tax-favored. So making sure that you have a little bit more balance in your overall strategy goes a really long way.
Yeah, and Joe, when people really understand the power of a Roth IRA, they start combining other tax strategies. Like business owners may set up retirement plans. The one that with the biggest deduction would be a defined benefit plan. You take a big deduction, you turn right around and do a big Roth conversion, you end up in the same spot. Real estate owners, they might do what's called a cost segregation study to get depreciation all up front, and then take a Roth conversion, offset those two. And then if you're an individual, maybe you look at some charitable strategies, maybe a donor advised fund, maybe a charitable remainder trust. There's all kinds of ways to combine the tax law to get more money into a Roth IRA.
Yeah, that's great, because I am creating taxable income when I do a Roth conversion. I'm adding income to my taxes. So you want to make sure that you combine that with deductions to help offset some of that tax burden.
Yeah, and finally, Joe, I wanted to talk about the residence. The rule is this: when you sell your home, you can exclude up to $250,000 of gain for a single person, $500,000 for a married couple. You just have to live in the home, so occupy as well as own the home for 2 out of the last 5 years, and you get this exclusion. Just realize if it was a rental property and you moved in, the rules are a little bit more complicated, so you might want to get a little help. Some of that may still be taxable.
Go to our website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. It's the 2020 tax guide, folks. There's a lot of really good opportunity. Go to the website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer, 2020 tax planning guide. No better year to do some tax planning than right now. We'll be back in just a second to wrap the show up. Hey, welcome back to the program. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. We're talking taxes and tax strategy, tax planning. Get your tax planning guide for 2020. A lot of different things that you might want to consider given this year. It's been a crazy year. Hopefully you can put yourself in a better position via taxes. Go to our website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on the special offer. It's our 2020 tax planning guide. Let's go to the true-false question. Let's see how you did.
I plan on converting my current non-deductible IRA to a Roth. When I do this, I will pay capital gains taxes on the appreciation on the date of the conversion. That is false. In fact, once you put the money into a traditional IRA, if you don't convert it right away and it goes up in value, by the time you convert the entire balance, you'll pay ordinary income tax on that appreciation, not capital gains tax.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question there. So let's say if you did the conversion right away, you would pay zero tax. You put $6,000 into a non-deductible IRA, that has basis, it's called. So you got $6,000 of basis, and if you convert it, let's say to a Roth, there would be no capital gains tax or ordinary income tax. And I think what Al just said is that if it grew a little bit, so whatever the growth would be subject to ordinary income tax. However, you have to look at other IRAs that you have in your overall account, because there's something that's called the aggregation and pro rata rules. So it gets a little bit more complex for this show anyway, but make sure that you talk to your tax advisor if you're doing non-deductible IRA contributions and then trying to convert if you have other type of retirement accounts, because we've seen messes happen there.
And we do full shows on that topic because there's a lot to it. There's a lot of ways to make mistakes. So Joe, I want to talk about how to pull this all together. How to make this work in retirement so that you actually pay less taxes. So let's go back here. Let's review the tax rates again. And these are the married rates for 2020. If you're single, cut these in half roughly. Okay, so married, first $19,000, $20,000, call it 10% tax rate. $80,000 to 12% tax rate. Those are two very low rates. Let's say you're spending about $100,000, but you want to stay in the 12% tax bracket. Well, you know, some of that income might be taxed at the 22% bracket because you're over 80,000. So here's the way that you think about that, is going back to this tax triangle, you take enough money out of here, tax deferred, to fill up that 12% bracket. So you stop there at 80%. Or $80,000. You could take the rest here from taxable. That would be long-term capital gains, also taxed at 15%, or the tax-free, which is taxed at 0. So you can be living in a 22% world in terms of expenses, but paying only a 12% tax rate. That's why you can make your money last a lot longer in retirement, Joe. And I think this is when people understand what they can do. It's pretty exciting.
I think you could even get even more creative if you understand it, right? So maybe you don't take the money up all the way to, because you'll have Social Security and pensions. So that's where this gets powerful, right? And then you're looking at, okay, well, here's what my income's going to be. Now that I'm going to look at this bracket, where do I fall from a tax perspective? Knowing that, hey, maybe I have some taxable gains that I could sell and not pay any tax if I keep myself in that 10 or 12% tax bracket. If I have money into a Roth IRA, those are never, ever going to be taxed. That's why we harp so much on tax diversification, because over the long term, it could save you significant amount of money. And it's not trying to find the magic pill of investments or finding the holy grail, because here's the story, there is no holy grail of investing, right? If you're working with someone that just tells you that they can beat the market, time the market, know when to get in and out, right, and save you from another collapse, they're lying to you, right? But if you can save money in tax because it's a known fact, that's where you want to probably put more of your focus.
Yeah, no question, Joe, and I think that's really the key. It's understanding how taxes work, taking advantage of the capital gains taxes, which are cheaper, 0, 15, or 20%, taking advantage of your tax-free Roth IRA. You got to get money into the Roth first, so do a little bit planning beforehand. But then you have some control over your retirement and where you pull those funds from to be able to reduce your taxes.
All right, let's go to Ask the Experts.
I have a large balance in my traditional IRA. I have some losses from my new business this year, and I expect to be in a low tax bracket. Would it make sense to convert to a Roth, to contribute to a new Roth, or to keep contributing to my traditional IRA? Well, I always like the idea of Roth contributing and converting, especially in a low tax bracket.
Yeah, sometimes it's like we harp so much on Roth, right? The answer's it's a lot more complex. And I think why we do that on this show is that a lot of you don't have a Roth IRA or even know what it is. I do these classes and hundreds and thousands of people are on these webinars and classes that I do, and I take a poll. I'm like, how many of you have a Roth? And they're like, oh, what is that? So it's going to be different for everyone. But yes, if you're in a lower tax bracket, compounding tax-free is by far, I think, you can't beat it.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of young people, when they're first starting in their career, it's probably best to put money into a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k as opposed to traditional, because the tax deduction doesn't mean as much to you because you save at lower rates.
But Alan, the tax deduction today doesn't really mean anything to a lot of people than it did when it first came out, right? Because if you look back when the 401k was born, right, back in the late 70s, what was the top marginal rate back then?
Yeah, it was 70%.
70%. It was almost double the rate that it is today.
Sure.
Right? So if you saved into a 401k plan, you had a significant tax savings. I mean, the average Joe, right, tax savings was probably 30%. Now you look, what was the average tax saving? Maybe half that, 10 or 12%. So even the Roth is probably going to be better. But make sure that you look at, you don't ignore your 401k plan if there's a match. So if you look at the hierarchy again, is that you go to the 401k with the match, and then you would go to a Roth IRA, in my opinion, fill that thing up, then go back to the 401k, and then fill that up, and if you still have money to save, do a conversion, and then put money into a brokerage account. So, I mean, there's balances that people should look at.
Well, there are, and I think a lot more people probably should get money into Roth IRA more than think that they should, just because the tax rates are lower right now than they've been in almost any other time in history. Now, obviously, if you're in the highest bracket now and you have very little saved, you're going to be in a very low bracket in retirement, then Roth IRA may not make sense. But in many other cases, Joe, we find it can make a ton of sense.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next question.
I just funded my Roth IRA, but now I need to decide what investments to make. This is my fun money. Should I invest in ETFs or mutual funds to have the best chance for a big payoff without taking too much risk? From Joan in Leucadia. Okay, money in a Roth IRA, how to invest it. What do you think, Joe?
Well, the Roth IRA is not fun money.
That it is for her.
Joan, it's not fun money. Fun money is like 1% of your overall liquid assets. You know how hard it is to get money into a Roth? There's limits on Roths, right? You can only put $6,000 into a Roth IRA. If it was unlimited, if it was limitless, then yeah, you could take a portion of that. But I would not use that as fun money, because fun money to me means you're going to lose it. So don't do that with your Roth. Do it with some other cash.
Yeah, but invest in growth type assets, maybe ETFs, maybe growth oriented stocks as opposed to bonds, because you get rewarded for your growth by paying no tax in the future.
All right, let's go to the peer takeaway. You got to understand the tax brackets that you're in. First of all, right, to make sure that you have a really cohesive tax strategy, you need to understand, well, am I in the 10% bracket or am I in the 37% bracket? You're going to have a different strategy. Looking at capital gains, like I said before, Warren Buffett might be in a lower tax bracket than a lot of people. The reason why, he understands the tax law. He understands capital gains, and those are taxed, capital assets are taxed lower than ordinary income. Roth IRAs, even better, right, folks? Tax-free, 100% tax-free. And you want to use all of these strategies to help you create that tax-efficient income. You know, when you look at Roths, is that, you know, we believe everyone should look at it, but not necessarily implement it, right?
Yeah. No question, because tax-free, that's good stuff.
There is no better rate. There is no better rate than zero. Go to our website, folks. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that tax guide, the 2020 tax guide. Get you straight and narrow. We only got a few months left of this great year called 2020. Can't come soon enough. But to put a bright side on things, go to our website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that 2020 tax planning guide and put yourself better from a tax perspective. All right, that's it for us. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week.